I gave this speech last week at the Southern Pain Conference down in Atlanta, and it was titled Hemp, Hemp, Hurray. Could hemp be a solution, part of the solution to the opioid crisis? Was talking to a bunch of physicians, and it was interesting to see, by a show of hands, how many physicians were just unfamiliar with this. So I will start this off saying, please be patient with your physicians. We are good people. We love you. However, we are uneducated when it comes to this. So when you come to us, it's out of ignorance that we put our hand up and say we don't understand and know. And so feel like it's my duty for the next year. My wife has given me a year to come to things like this and be away from the family, and then I got to go back to being a husband and father. So I'm telling anybody I can everything that I'm learning. So one thing I think we should talk about is, what is CBD and hemp? So you have this cannabis plant, right? God gave us a cannabis plant. It's been around for millions of years. And marijuana is the part that contains THC. That's the psychoactive part that gets you high. This thing we call hemp, or CBD, is all the rest of the plant, right? And so there are hundreds of cannabinoids. CBD is just one. There's CBG, CBV, CBA. There's acid forms of all of those. And there's hundreds. So this one thing, THC, the part that gets you high, is that marijuana. So in the state of North Carolina, in 2017, the North Carolina Hemp Commission came along and said, hey, you guys can grow hemp. And so once I got wind that hemp was going to be able to be grown in the state of North Carolina, I'd been watching the same television shows you guys have been watching, that, hey, there's this medical marijuana out there. It's helping with pain. I have over 5,000 pain patients in our 8 clinics. I want to look into this. So we started doing some research and trying to understand what's going on out west and how could we bring that to the Bible Belt and use industrial hemp to help folks. So first of all, the first thing I had to do was a little research. So I looked up all the articles I could, and when you go to PubMed and you put in cannabis or hemp, there's over 20,000 articles out there. So if a doctor says it hasn't been studied, it's not true. It has been studied. It's just not the type of studies that we're used to. And these were the 3 studies that really gravitated, that made me say, I have got to bring this into my clinic. The first 2 looked at opioid reduction. If a person was in a medical marijuana program, so this is not CBD, this is the one with the THC. If they were in a medical marijuana program, they were using 40 to 60% less narcotic for their pain. Okay, that's pretty significant. I like that as a pain physician. We're in the middle of an opioid crisis. 60,000 Americans are dying every year from narcotics. This is a big deal, and there's a lot of pressure put on us to find alternative ways of dealing with this. We're real good at doing procedures, real good at prescribing medications, but those are the only tricks we have in our trade, right? So we need more tricks. So for me, medical marijuana seemed like something we need to be considering. The third had to do with all the states that had brought medical marijuana into their statehood. They saw a 25% reduction in mortality. So 25% reduction in people dying that were using medical marijuana compared to those that didn't. So for us, this was good anecdotal evidence, because this is not CBD, that we said, let's bring CBD. Let's bring all the rest of the plant to our patients, and let's see what happens. So the next thing we had to think about is legality. And the legality of this is not so important to you, but for physicians who don't want to recommend this or are concerned about recommending it, legality was very important. In 2002, Conant versus Walters, the Ninth Circuit of Appeals said the physicians have the right of free speech. We can say anything we want to our patients, whether it's legal or illegal. So this allowed the medical marijuana programs to start. So if you notice, you never prescribe marijuana, or you never prescribe CBD, you only recommend it. It's then the patient's responsibility to go out and find it, whether it's legal or illegal. But physicians, we are protected. We can talk about anything we want. In the state of North Carolina, my concern was, hey, I'm going to be offering or recommending a product to a patient. Is hemp or is CBD legal? And there's a little gray zone, right? There's this thing called Schedule 1, and they threw it all into Schedule 1, that the cannabis plant has no medical benefit. Now, for those of you that have been watching the news, 2 days ago, the DEA and the FDA descheduled CBD. from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5. So now, Hemp Hurray, the federal government has finally admitted it has medical benefit. This is a watershed moment in the industry. And I think now we're going to see physicians and other states start getting even more involved in this. And that's great because we need more scientists taking ownership of this rather than just big medical marijuana industry taking the lead. So from a standpoint is what's in this bottle, is it legal or not? The real question comes down to where was it sourced? So if you had a marijuana plant that had 20% THC and you extract that out and then you take away the THC, you burn it off, that product is illegal in this state. If you take the hemp plant that had less than 0.3% when you grew it, never could get you high, and you source your oil from the hemp plant, it's completely legal. So when you're looking at legality, it all matters where was this grown and where did it come from. So when you go to buy a product, you want to know where it's sourced, because inadvertently you could be buying a product, a CBD product, that was manufactured in another state, like California or Colorado, that was sourced from marijuana. It came into our state, you purchase it, and if it wasn't sourced from the right space, right place, you are in danger. So for me, we needed to take ownership of this. So what we did is the first thing we did is we said, okay, let's take 100 of our patients and let's put them on CBD. At that time, we didn't know anything about dosing. We didn't know anything about it. We just said, let's go buy 100 bottles from a reputable source and let's just give it to 100 patients. Now, luckily, our clinics has their own reference toxicology lab. So our scientists developed methods to look at these products so we could see the THC content as well as all the other cannabinoids, and so we could see exactly what is in our product. So we felt good that the product we were recommending or offering to our patient was legit. So we're a pain clinic, so we wanted our patients to come back and say, hey, our pain is so much better. But it was very interesting. When we did a survey and talked to our patients, we realized that was not the number one thing they came back and told us. The first thing they told us is they slept so much better. When they would take this about an hour before sleep, they slept, on average, they went from 4.5 hours of sleep to 6 hours of sleep. And for a patient who's in chronic pain, that's a big deal. They also reported they were starting to dream. And so for me, that was important too. I never dream. But our patients were saying they were dreaming again, and that led us to believe they may have more delta waves. They were going in and out of restful sleep, therefore getting a higher quality of sleep rather than the sleep that's induced from pharmaceutical drugs. The second thing they did is they came back and told us, hey, doc, we are much more calmer, I have less anxiety. So before, they would reach for a benzodiazepine, or they'd reach for a glass of wine or alcohol when they were having their flare-ups, whether it was pain or anxiety flare. And what they were coming back and telling us is that now they were reaching for their hemp bottle. So for me as a physician, this is harm reduction, right? Now my patients are reaching for this bottle when they're having their flare rather than reaching for another pharmaceutical drug or an alcohol, because we know those things plus alcohol plus a narcotic equals death. And the third thing they came back is they told us the sense of well-being, that they didn't understand, that their glass was half empty before and now it's half full. The sky was a little brighter, they were motivated to get up and stop watching television and engage with their grandchildren. They were giving us stories that they were starting to get motivated. And we saw this firsthand in our clinic, because before we had hemp, the only secret sauce I had in my pain clinic was yoga, right? If I could convince my patients to do yoga and the mindfulness of the yoga, I could reduce their narcotic requirements by 30 or 40%. The problem was I live in the Bible Belt and yoga is of the devil, and so, hey, funny again, okay. And so we had to change it, and we called it movement therapy. We had to do all these tricks to try to get our patients involved with yoga, but still very resistant, because the pain patient's mentality is, I'm broke. I can't do yoga. Why are you asking me to do something like yoga? And really, our yoga is sitting in a chair. It's really more about connecting your brain with your body and to kind of go into that mindful state. The movements are wonderful if you can do them. They strengthen your core, but really just having them engaged and take the time out of their day to think about something else other than their pain. So this sense of well-being is kind of odd for a physician because I can't put a number on that. It's not like a blood pressure 120/80 or hemoglobin A1C of 4.2. How do I document this sense of well-being and hope? And so it was very hard for us. But hemp is hope, is what we started to understand. And our clinics changed dramatically once our patients started taking this. We started to play reggae music in them. It seemed like our waiting rooms were a little less depressing than before. Patients were sharing stories with other patients, and it really has changed our practice of medicine dramatically. And so the fourth thing we came up with was this increased proof pain control. Initially, our patients told us on the surveys, when they filled out the surveys, there was no change in pain. And we realized we had a flawed study. We were putting the patient's name at the top, and they were putting this. And they were scared to death to tell us their pain went from an 8 to a 6 or an 8 to a 5, because they thought we were going to give them this and take away their pain medication. So we realized our study was flawed because we should disconnect the patient's name with the data we were trying to obtain. But the reality is our patients' pain was better. Those patients that had pain that had to deal with inflammation seemed to be really getting much better than those patients that had more neuropathic pain or other kind of more mechanical pain. We were at this point recommending very low doses, and so we got some pain control, but it really wasn't the bread and butter. It wasn't what we wanted or expected. It was the sleep, anxiety, and this overall sense of hope and well-being. So, okay, we were excited about it. We wanted to bring this into our practice. Our patients were getting better, and they were on this path of getting better. But a study came out in November of last year that looked at all the products that are on the line that you can buy online or at your local vape store. And they showed that 70% of all CBD products are not what they say they are. They have too much of something, not enough of another. They have spice in it. They may have THC. They were sourced from the wrong place. So for me as a physician that's starting to make a recommendation to my patients, this was unacceptable. I'm going to tell them, please go out and purchase something and go get it on the internet, but 70% of the time, it's not going to be right. I couldn't fathom doing that. So that led us to go on our journey to say, we've got to take ownership of this. And of course, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm a physician. My first inclination is, okay, I'm going to be a hemp farmer. I'm going to extract this stuff, and I'll make it. Well, I don't even have a garden at home, so I don't know why I thought I was going to be a hemp farmer. But what I realized is I can meet farmers. And so I met farmers, and they contracted with me to grow for me. I met an extractor. I contracted with them to extract it for me. And then we had our own lab that we could test this and make sure is exactly what we wanted. So we came up with integrated hemp solutions. And we're just one product. We're very simple. We only have one product. We're trying to keep it simple, mainly for our patients and our staff. But we want to understand exactly what this can do before we move on to other formulations. So, big deal. So as you go out and decide to buy a product, always ask, can I see the lab results? All right, they should be third-party lab tested. Some of those are questionable. Even the third-party lab testing out there is kind of a sham. Sometimes they just put false results there because they want to make the company look good, so they continue to use their lab. So sometimes it's not even, I've even taken products and tested them in our lab, and it doesn't match the lab result that came with them when I requested. So even asking for third-party lab results doesn't necessarily mean that's really what's in the bottle. So it's kind of buyer beware. So, you know, when you find a good product that works, that's great. Keep it. Keep using that. But still, since this is not FDA regulated, and that's probably something we should talk about, this product is not FDA regulated. So that means I can't stand up here and tell you it diagnoses anything, treats anything, or cures anything, right? We don't have that type of data. No studies have ever been shown to do that. So we have to think of this as a nutraceutical. This is something that is a nutritional supplement made from a plant that we can then utilize in our life and maybe get positive results, maybe not. So it's a hard thing as a physician to be making recommendations of non-FDA regulated things, but in this opioid crisis, for me, it was well worth putting my neck out on the line to do that. Once you start taking this product, our patients are more concerned about this. How's it going to affect me if I take a urine drug screen? Probably most of you don't care about that, but my patients do, and a lot of folks that have jobs do. And the answer to this, if you go on the internet, the ones that are trying to just sell you a bottle will say, hey, it doesn't affect your drug test. but it does. So there's two types of testing. One's called immunoassay. That's when you urinate into a cup and there's a color change. That's antibody mediated. So that's going to come up positive because that little strip can't tell the difference between CBD and THC. They look very similar. So you're going to be almost 100% of the time positive on a point of care test. But if you send it off for confirmation, when you actually look at the molecular weight, this comes up negative. And we've done experiments with folks, and we've just given hundreds upon hundreds of milligrams of this stuff, and we cannot get them to test positive on a mass spec when you do a confirmation. So if drug testing is important to you, you need to make sure whoever's testing you knows that you will come up positive on a point of care, but if they send it off for confirmation, you will be negative with this product. Dosing. Now, this is really important, the dosing of CBD. And I do, good golly, there's a great study out there that shows that if you take this, it really helps reduce speaker anxiety. And I'm realizing that I didn't take mine. And I forgot to tell you guys something. This endocannabinoid system, so I started to tell you a little bit about it first, but I need you guys to, before we get into dosing, understand it just a little bit more. So the endocannabinoid system is something that was discovered in the early 1990s by an Israeli scientist. And we're just starting to understand what it is. So when you think of this endocannabinoid system, you need to think of it as kind of a web that connects the immune system with the nervous system, with the muscular system, bringing all your body systems together. I like to think of it as your inner physician. Right? So you have your outer physician, that's the doctors, and we tell you what we think is right and what you should do, but you actually have an inner doctor. And this inner doctor is always trying to keep you in balance, right? So if your blood sugars are too high, I used to think it was insulin. Insulin was released, and that brings your blood sugar down. If your blood sugar was too low, it was the breakdown of glycogen, and I'd get your blood sugar up. For me, it was a very simplistic thought. What I'm realizing from reading studies is it's the endocannabinoid system that is helping maintain that blood sugar. So inadvertently, those patients that we talked to you about earlier that showed us these things related to pain were also coming back and saying, hey, my blood pressure is so much better. I used to be on 2 blood pressure medicines, I'm now on 1. Or I was a pre-diabetic, or I was taking an oral hypoglycemic agent, and now I'm off my diabetic medication. So we're not primary care, but our patients were telling us these stories of them getting off their other medications. It was because they were bathing their endocannabinoid system and their body was able to get itself in balance. So we have the ability to heal ourselves from within, and the theory is we must bathe this endocannabinoid system. Another theory out there is that we all have different endocannabinoid systems, right? So when you're taking this product, you may actually just need 1 drop. If she took 1 drop of this, she might get a wonderful, miraculous result. And we've had some patients that take 1 drop of this a day and they're completely off their narcotics. I go back to the previous gentleman, placebo effect. Patient will swear up and down it's not placebo. They just need 1 drop. They can tell a significant difference, while another patient may take a bottle of this and get the same result. So all of us are different, and that's what's going to make it so hard when we start talking about dosing, because there is no dose. I can't tell you, take 25 milligrams of this BID or twice a day, and you get a desired result. Because we're all different, everybody's dose is different. So when we start talking about the dosing, we're going to go through, and we'll do it right now. So if you decided to take this product, you got to think, what am I taking it for? So there's got to be an end result. I'm taking it to sleep better. I'm taking it for less anxiety. I'm taking it to manage my pain. So you have an end goal. We recommend starting low and going slow. Right? So my patients are the poor and the elderly. 75% of my patients are Medicare and Medicaid. They don't have the money to pay for this, right? So I wanted to offer it free to all my patients, but my regulatory attorneys wouldn't let me. They said that was an inducement, that I was inducing people to come see me versus another physician. So I have to charge them something. So you come to our clinic, you show your Medicaid card or show us your income, we'll give it to you for what our cost is, right? So we have means of getting to people as cheaply as possible. But it's important not only financially to take as little bit as possible, but also because something you'll learn here in a second. There's an appropriate dose for everyone. So you start off with something like this, and you take a quarter of a dropper. So this is a 250 milligram bottle. That means there's 8.3 milligrams in every dropper full or every cc. And see, we say take a quarter of a dropper or just 2 milligrams. Now this is really micro dosing, okay, very small dose. And you take that twice a day. And you wait for 3 days. And after the third day, we say, hey, go to your yoga or your mindfulness state. Sit in a chair, ask, and do an inner inventory. How's my breath? What's my mood? What was my goal for this? And assess, am I where I want to be? And I bet you after 3 days, you're going to say, no, I'm not quite there. So now double your dose. Go to a half a dropper twice a day. And do that for another 3 days. It may take you 2 months to figure out your right dose. So the problem with this is when you go buy a bottle from someone and you take it, the likelihood that it's going to work is very small. Because if you don't understand dosing, it's not going to work for you. You're going to have these expectations, I'm going to buy this and it's miraculously going to do something, and it's not going to miraculously do anything. A lot of times it's very subtle, the new changes that are going to start happening with you, and it's going to be your loved ones that start to notice what's happening before the patient actually starts noticing. So this kind of mindfulness is very important in doing these self-assessments. So when you take it, it's what's called a biphasic curve. So you take a little bit and you get a little result. A little bit more, you get a little bit better result. A little bit more, better. And eventually you're going to find this sweet spot because it's kind of a curve like this, right? So you want to find this sweet spot of what your dose is. Now, if you take too much, you start going down the wrong side of the curve and you will actually get decreasing results. So that's why you want to start slow, because you want to find this sweet spot and not take too much. What's going to happen once you find that sweet spot and you go, gosh, I like this is working for me, in about 6 weeks to 3 months, all of a sudden you're going to look at that bottle and go, this stuff's not working anymore. This guy sold me water, there's something not in it, it just stopped working. And so our inclination is to take more. But what's happened is you've started to bathe your endocannabinoid system and you're actually getting healthier on the inside. So that curve actually shifted. And so you were sitting here, now you're sitting there. So the first maneuver, once this is working for you and it stops working, is to take less, not more. If I was up here trying to sell you a product and trying to make money from you, I'd just say keep taking more and more. But the truth of the matter, take less. And so you'll find you'll be back on the right side of the curve and you'll be happy. That about 80% of our patients, once they take less, are happy. The other 20%, something's going on inside of them that they're actually more unhealthy and the curve has shifted the other way, and we recommend they go and start taking more. But it's important to have somebody to talk to about this. So, we have hemp pharmacies, about 8 of them now, not in this neck of the woods, but these places are starting to pop up. And even the pharmacy that's back here that's offering this, he is starting to get information and starting to become an expert on this. So finding a pharmacy, finding a place to go that you can go back to and continue to have a relationship to tell them, here's my story, here's what's happening to me, what do you recommend? Is very important. To think you're going to be able to solve this on your own, a lot of times it's just not going to happen. It gets too frustrating. As well as dosing too, a little trick you would, if you get this bottle and take it, is the first time you take it at night. Take it about an hour before you go to bed. Take a full dropper full, and you'll sleep so much better. And what you'll do is when you wake up and you go, gosh, I had a more restful sleep, or I enjoyed that sleep, you're proving to your brain that this works. And that's important in our society because we're quick, immediate gratification kind of people. So now you've tricked your brain, okay, this stuff works. Hopefully that'll keep you going as you take this journey that could take you weeks, if not months, to find that perfect dose. Okay, dosing. Anything more about dosing? No. But don't worry, as far as side effects, we haven't seen any. We've had 2 patients out of about 1,000 that said it made them feel a little nauseated. It may be the oil we mix with it, but only 2 out of 1,000 have said they felt a little nauseating. Other than that, we haven't had anybody have any allergic reactions, any problems with it. You won't be addicted to it. You won't get high from it. And so for me, that's wonderful. You know, I finally have a product that has no lethal dose, right? So every medicine that I prescribe has a ED and an LD, an effective dose and a lethal dose. This has no lethal dose. So I'm not worried about putting this in the hands of any of my patients because it's not going to hurt them. And if anything, it's going to help them. Let's see, what else do we talk about? So when we look at all the things that it can do for a patient that's in pain, reducing anxiety, improving sleep, providing hope, which is very powerful, also decreases craving. So an aside back on dosing, we tell our patients that are taking narcotics to take this with their narcotic. So if they take their narcotic 3 times a day, we say take your hemp oil 3 times a day with your narcotic. There's 2 reasons for that. Good studies show that when you take it with it, it'll make your narcotic be perceived by you as being stronger. So hopefully, if I can have you perceive that the pain medicine is stronger, on a next visit or subsequent visit, we may be able to titrate you down to get that same result. The second thing, and the second reason for taking it with your narcotic is a good study to show that it decreases you from developing tolerance. So that's one of the problems with narcotics. You start taking them and then they stop working, you need more, and that's how we got into this opioid crisis, is that folks just kept getting ramped up on their narcotics. Ever since we added this to our patients who take it with their narcotics, they never come back saying they need more. And so it does help with preventing that tolerance from developing. If you're taking blood pressure medicine or diabetic medication, we tell you to take it 2 hours after you take that medication, just because anecdotally there's things in this research that says it may drop your blood pressure a little. Those are studies done mainly with marijuana that have THC, and the THC is the more cardiovascular stimulating compound, not CBD. But as a physician, we always like to be on the safe side, so we tell them diabetic, hypertension, take that 2 hours after that dose. Of course, we're finding it reduces pain. Now you got to remember, our patients are starting low and going slow. So the pain patients that are really benefiting this right now are the pain patients that have a lot of inflammation, fibromyalgia. It's just wonderful. Our patients that have more complex problems like RSD are still on that journey. They're starting to get up to 100 to 200 milligrams a day, right? So you need a lot more. Well, that becomes very expensive. So when you start thinking about this, how I'm going to purchase this, you need to start thinking of how much am I going to pay per milligram, right? And so typically about 1,000 milligram costs between anywhere from $100 to $120. So you're spending 10 to 12 cents per milligram. And if you need 200 milligrams a day in a month, you're going to need 6,000 milligrams. At 10 cents a milligram, you're spending $600 a month. My patients can't afford $600 a month to have this condition, and they're trying to get up to those types of doses. And so, like I said, I tried to give this away, but I can't. Another way we've decided how do we reduce the price to our patients is we said, hey, become a hemp educator. One, we wanted our patients to be educated. So become a hemp educator. Join our program. We're going to educate you. And if you get educated, take a little test eventually. It's a simple test. You can then buy this product half price for wholesale. So it's my way of trying to say, hey, if you need a large quantity of this stuff, how do I cut your price in half? So you're getting this for 5 to 6 cents per milligram. And so I would encourage any of you that think that you're on this journey or currently on this journey of taking this. Amy Dustin, our chief, she's a nurse and she's our chief educator, is here. She's wearing our integrated hemp solutions. Give her your contact information. She'll send you an email and get you involved in our hemp educator, our ambassador program. And if anybody just wants information, give her your email and we will send you out all the information you would ever want and start to direct you. A website that's very good is projectcbd.org. They're an independent website. They have a lot of wonderful information about CBD, and that's a good resource to go to as well. Projectcbd.org. Okay, we're in Wilmington, Jacksonville, Fayetteville, Laurinburg, Rockingham, Pinehurst, Asheboro, and Asheville. And I would say we're going to open up more, but we're not. You get to a point where you have about 150 employees, you do not want another employee. So we are not going down any more paths of opening up more clinics. We're just going to continue to work in the backyards that we've set up. Now this point here, this new neural development, and I think is very important. And I was so impressed to hear our previous speakers all talk about this. And this is where I think the future lies. And this is where I think CBD has its place with this neuroplasticity or neurogenesis. At the conference I just went to last week in Atlanta, I met a gentleman by the name of Dr. David Hanscom. And he has a website and a book called, what is his website called? I'll think of it, dang nabbit. And he was amazing. He was a back surgeon who now has proven in the literature that 70% of all back surgeries are inappropriate and just lead to more chronic pain and RSD. And now he's on the warpath to get out and educate others that think twice before you have back surgery. But what he discovered along his path is the power of the unconscious mind. And the tricks, or I say tricks, but the maneuvers that he was teaching at in his lecture, I thought were very powerful. And his lecture really focused on that he needed the patient to get good sleep and get rid of their anxiety and anger. These were two cornerstones that the patient must obtain before the patient was able to start moving towards being pain-free. And he claims that having thousands of patients that become pain-free that have been just in debilitating states, mainly from working on their minds. So I was very intrigued because he was having to prescribe pharmaceutical drugs, Ambien and Xanax, for pain and anxiety, but I knew, and Neurontin. So Neurontin is another drug that as a pain physician, boy, we gave that out like water, and Lyrica too, right? Just throw it at everybody, because why? It's not a narcotic, it calms down the nerves, people seem to like it, but the reality is I'm starting to think of Neurontin and Lyrica more and more as not a very good drug, and now I'm working to get my patients off of it. Yes, it does calm down the central nervous system, but when it calms down the central nervous system, it also impedes neurogenesis. So now your brain is not growing anymore. So if you're trying to grow out of your pain, you're kind of getting locked in with these medications. So after talking to Dr. Hanscom, he realized he wanted to partner with me, I wanted to partner with him, because using CBD oil, he could now not have to prescribe an Ambien, not have to prescribe a Xanax. He could supplement those with the CBD oil and get neurogenesis, right? Get something that is going to stimulate our brains to grow and to problem solve. I have an example here, a patient of ours who had PTSD, came back, had chronic pain as well, but one of his complaints was, hey doc, I can only drive from my house to my work. My wife asked me to go to the grocery store, I can't do it. I break out in a sweat. It's the most stressful thing because I know there's not a bomb between here and here. So he was locked in. So the brain that's locked in, like with depression, PTSD, and chronic pain, keeps going down these same pathways. And so he could not problem solve. Once he started taking CBD, a couple of months afterwards, he came back and said, doc, I can now go to the grocery store. And what that showed me is that he was starting to think his problem. He was starting to use his mind to solve his issue, to create new solutions that he was not able to do before with just on his own. Another powerful thing that Dr. Hanscom told me about, and now it's proved true in my life, is this writing. And I've heard a couple of other folks said, hey, you should think about journaling and writing. Well, Dr. Hanscom's approach was, yes, you need to write. You need to do creative writing every day, 10 to 15 minutes. Just write everything you're mad at. I am mad at my pain. I'm mad at these doctors for not solving this problem. I'm mad at this, and if you're happy. So even if you're happy, the day is wonderful. Just be creative. Whatever is going on in your life, just write it down. And then once you write it down, destroy it, right? Don't keep a journal, would be his philosophy. Destroy it. And what you're doing is you're actually destroying it and you throw it in the trash. In the subconscious mind is so much more powerful than the conscious mind, you're kind of getting rid of it. And so I thought that was interesting, and I started to do creative writing. I don't have chronic pain, but I thought I would do it anyway. And it was interesting, the first night I did it, it was down in Atlanta, I just wrote for 20 minutes before I went out to dinner. And then I went to dinner, and my wife and I had a crisis happened a year ago, and she was mad, I was mad. It had nothing to do with us. We were kind of just mad at the crisis. But I realized I'd never dealt with that anger, right? I'd never dealt with it. And so it was always suppressed, and physicians were very good at suppressing all our emotions. So I had just written and written. And then at dinner that night, and it was more than an hour after I'd done that, it just all started coming clear to me about that incident and my wife, and I just got on the phone and I just was telling my wife how much I loved her and that I've got some solutions to this and I've rethought about this, and it was very powerful for me. It had nothing to do with chronic pain, but it allowed me to somehow tell my unconscious to free me up to problem solve. And so much of chronic pain, I feel, is anger. And when you're angry and you hold on to that anger, it is hard to let it go. Another example is yesterday, before I was shaving, I reached down to grab my razor in the water, and I grabbed the wrong part, and it took a big chunk out of my finger. Oh, dang, it hurt like the dickens, right? And it wouldn't stop bleeding. So I went downstairs, and everybody's having breakfast, and I'm complaining. My finger, ow, it's bleeding. I'm showing them the blood. They were grossed out. But, it was just traumatic. And so I started off the day, and it was just awful. I'm in pain. My finger, I got a golf game tomorrow. I'm going to play miserably because of this finger. And my mind just was ruminating over and over about this darn pain. I had the worst day at work yesterday. I fired one person. Probably should have fired a lot more, right? But it was a bad day because it started off bad. I got home and was still complaining about my finger. And my 15-year-old daughter said, haven't you been talking about this creative writing stuff? Why don't you just write about it? Sure enough, I wrote about it, threw it in trash, and next thing you know, we're out at dinner. I'm not thinking about my finger anymore, right? I even woke up this morning, took a shower. I was supposed to change my Band-Aid, forgot I even had it. I got the same darn Band-Aid on from yesterday. It's like I've forgotten about it. And it wasn't until I was driving here, I was like, oh yeah, my finger. Yeah, it hurts when I push it, but it was not encompassing my whole life like it had before. So I know these are small examples, but I think they're powerful examples of how we have misplaced anger and we ruminate on things, and how do we compartmentalize it. So for me, as we listen to all these other wonderful folks that have talked and given us great ideas on how to change our brain, how to be hopeful and happy, it's one thing to say it and do it. It's another thing, do you have something that you can take in your life that is known to cause neurogenesis? So when I look at this, it's not so much that this is the answer to the opioid crisis, or this is this wonderful thing that's going to cure everything, but is it part of the solution? Is it part of what we need to help bathe our endocannabinoid system in order for our brains to mature and us to move out of chronic pain and on to health? So for me, hemp is hope. We're excited to be a part of this, and we are developing new products. And because one of the problems, and golly, I got so much to tell you, but one of the problems is you're going to buy this darn stuff, and like I said before, and it's not going to work, and because there's a flaw in this, right? God makes a plant, and when He does, it's never the same. So when we make a batch of this and we harvest it, this bottle is much different than the next batch we made. So the cannabinoid profiles always change. So a lot of times people who find something like this that works, they keep switching different vendors. They'll go from this to this to this because they're trying to find the one that worked again. So for us, what we're trying to do is say, okay, God made a wonderful product. Now how do we standardize this product? So what we're working on now is to pull off the THC and the CBD, the CBV, the CBA, and put them in their own containers and then reformulate it. So every time you buy a bottle, it has the same cannabinoid profile. So you get a consistent product every time. So I think man is going to have to tweak this a little bit because just buying a natural product, it's going to change all the time, and it's going to be confusing for you. So I could stand up here and talk to the cows come home. I got so much information, but happy to stay as long as you'd like to talk to you anywhere. Amy is here and would love to take your email and get you information about what we're doing and any questions you have. And thank you so much for having me today, and appreciate it.